In Strategic Command, World War II, World at War, money is everything. And I'm really not exaggerating. See all these units on the map? This is nothing compared to the amount of units you will end up with by the end of the game. Even if you look at Japan, which starts out with a ton of units, and Italy, which has, even more. Nations come in all flavors and sizes, and some of them are more or less capable at the beginning. Germany has, well, the Axis in general, have some advantages, maybe Italy aside, due to their advanced technology at the beginning, but their numbers are quite small. Japan being an exception to that, though Japan's income is small enough that they don't really get to grow too much too easily compared to the Allies, the USSR of which can make enough money at 100% mobilization that it puts nations like Germany and Italy combined at the beginning, hell, throw in Japan and it can match them, to absolute shame. And so knowing how to make money and what to do with it is really important in this game. So I want to talk to you about money, what it affects, how you can get it, and maybe how you should spend it. So in Strategic Command, MPPs up here are the way money and government resources are resembled. If you go into your reports and then you go to graphs, you can see the MPPs collected, spent, and lost here by every individual nation. You could see the amount plundered by taking over other nations, like the turn that that country falls specifically, and the amount spent on research and diplomacy. You could see this for you, your allies, and your enemies, no matter what side you're on. You cannot see this for minor nations because their money funnels into the major nations and they benefit from what the major nations spend on. So only these nations here matter. You can also see the amount lost to raiding activities as well as gained or lost from or around convoys. There are very few ways to take money away from your enemy directly. There is literally no way to just take the MPPs an enemy is sitting around and say, that's mine now. The closest thing is to get a nation to surrender and then get the plunder from it, and that's it. Otherwise, to delete MPPs that your enemy would have otherwise had access to, you could take units such as strategic bombers, as well as rockets, and anything else that can target a hex, and not the unit on the hex, to target hexes on the map that produce MPPs, which we'll talk about in a moment when I talk about earning MPPs, and attack these to lower their strength values, which will then lower the MPPs gained from them on the next turn, not on the current turn, because you've already kind of passed to there. Otherwise, you can raid convoy lines belonging to your enemies, and the enemy can do the same thing to you. Other than that, they've spent it on units, so kill a unit, and they lose the MPP spent on that. Depending on the unit, land units can be rebuilt for a cheaper price. Air units and naval units, not really. Now, when it comes to earning money, that's what all these little hexes are for. So there is a way to kind of get an idea without actually looking, other than, the reports, right? That's to go to war maps and click on any country. For example, Germany. We can see they have 10 cities / capital / towns, 5 ports, some mines. We can see fortress fortifications and oil. Cities can produce some NPPs, but primarily what you're looking for is oil and mines. These are the big money generators. But there are no resources like that in this game. There isn't oil as a resource. There's not ore as a resource. Mines and oil are just very good hexes at creating NPPs. For example, we have 2 mines right here. Loose, we can't actually see into right now. Let's look at ones actually that we can see into. So Essen and Dortmund, they have 10 strength, they produce 20 MPPs. That means each of these is producing 2 MPPs per 1 strength value, and they appear to be capping out at 10. Every hex caps out at a different number. There are some rules that go to how much strength a hex can have that are defined in the manual. However, these rules are broken all the time, so I won't bother explaining them to you because they're pointless. Over here, we can see Potsdam has 8 supply. Same thing as strength, really. At least as far as making money is concerned, not as far as actually supplying units. If it says supply, that's better for supplying units than strength, but for making MPPs, it is generally the same. This one's earning much less, probably like 0.25 MPPs per supply. So at 8, it's producing only 2 MPPs. The cities like Berlin, major capital here, is producing 24 MPPs, is producing at the same rate as these mines are. And a lot of the capitals, especially the really important ones, can do stuff like that as well. However, some smaller capitals like Luxembourg is only producing 1 MPP per supply, and it's only getting up to 5 supply, as we can see. But these locations, this is what you look for money. Towns, sure. Capital cities, definitely. Important cities that are not capital cities, it's still 1 MPP per. And look at this, this goes up to 12 supply. Again, there's rules, but the game breaks them way more than it actually uses the defined rules. So you can check the cities for them. However, whenever you see mines or oil, and you know, this is what a mine looks like right here. They make this noise when you click on them. These are really, really good for MPPs, and they're essentially equivalent to oil. And let's look at oil over here. We have Palembang, which is 5 strength right now, is producing 15 MPPs. That means per strength point, this is producing 3 MPPs. That's crazy. However, some nations like this one here, whether you own them or not, provide their MPPs via a convoy line. That's something to keep in mind. Whereas everything in Germany will go right to my MPP count. These MPPs from the DEI are being transported to Japan. Even if Japan takes us over, they still have to defend the convoy line. But not everything works like that. Ethiopia doesn't send its MPPs back to Italy via a convoy line, it just teleports. There really isn't any defined rules about that. The game just picks and chooses which one it wants you to defend and which ones it does not. There are researches, notably down here, that affect this stuff as well. Industrial technology will just increase your income from all MPP sources from the map. Just as a whole, the higher it gets. Production technology, logistics are examples of techs that will reduce the cost of things that cost MPPs, thus allowing you to save MPPs by spending less in the long run. So you might want to keep your eye out on researches like that. As a final note on earning MPPs and as a segue into spending them, there's also random events that will pop up as you go between turns that do have the ability to get you MPPs or spend MPPs, and a lot of these can be worth it. Not all of them are worth it. I might make a guide dedicated to the events, or at least maybe what to look at, how to play these different nations, but usually you'll want to do some looking into the strategy guide, which you could find over here, for example, to see what these events give and take and compare maybe prices and stuff like that, because events are a good way to spend MPPs a lot of the time. For example, as Germany, you can get an event to get Peru to join you. The price of getting them to join you like that versus trying to diplo them in, 2 completely different ballparks. Trying to get them to join via this could cost you definitely over 500,000 MPPs, maybe closer to 1,000, whereas you can get them to join you for more like 100. If you take the event, some of these are definitely worth looking at. And then that can lead to an income from mines in Peru, for example, the mine in Peru as well as the capital city, which would then pay off the price of getting them pretty easily as well. So there are benefits for getting nations to join you via events or just events in general that can provide income. Conquering nations outright via a declaration of war. You know, you click your nation, you go click the enemy nation, you declare war. That is obviously a way to get MPPs, not just from plunder, but, you know, you'll get their mines. However, there are some things where sometimes a mine, for example, that's operating at 10 strength, when you take it over, it will lower in strength for its permanent, like, height, the max it can reach, with no explanation. There is no explanation in the manual that's consistent with this, unfortunately. Just note that if you declare war on Belgium because it has a mine, and then maybe it doesn't do as well after, this is more relevant in the Soviet area, honestly. don't be surprised and don't expect the game or the manual to even explain that this could really happen to you, because it won't. There's no indication that it will happen. It just will happen sometimes. So keep that in mind. Now, back on spending, there's a lot of ways to spend MPPs. It really kind of depends who you're playing as. Diplomacy, as I mentioned, is one of those ways. You get a nation to join you peacefully, or, you know, hostily, and you could get stuff from them. I mean, heck, DEI is a good example. You get the DEI to join you peacefully, and you're actually still going to earn less from the oil than if you just left them neutral with this special convoy route that they start out with. However, you know, occupying them all the same, it is a way to spend MPPs. There's a lot of nations on the map that are just supposed to be neutral forever, and you could spend money on them. I would really recommend you do this primarily as the allies. The Axis can do it, but as the Axis, it has to really meet your strategic goals. As the allies, it can be a lot more reactionary, and again, I might make some more tailored guides for that eventually. Separate to that, you have purchasing units and research as the main ways you're going to spend units. Purchasing units including when you go to your units and you give them upgrades for things that you have researched. These are the main two ways. And you really need to learn how to balance them. And it's really tough. You're gonna need a couple playthroughs before you get it down. I feel like I don't even have it down all the time, because you have to be able to think well into the future. You can spend only a maximum amount of MPPs on research at any one time for any nation, and it's kind of an overtime thing. You can take your research chits out for a bit of a refund, not a full refund. You cannot take away diplomacy chits for a refund. And then when it comes to purchasing units, you can right-click disband a unit for some NPPs, but it's far less NPPs than you would put into actually getting the unit. And there's very little reason you'd want to do that. There's probably a couple, right? But it's not really pertinent to a money guide. But when you purchase any units, you know, you could choose what upgrades to apply to them. Just be wary that you'll be paying the price relative to your current technology prices. When the unit's made, the prices might be lowered. It would just take an extra turn to apply those upgrades. So you could think about maybe saving some money here or there as you spend. However, you're going to want to definitely find a balance. The Axis really can't afford to be maxing out research all the time. Germany, Japan, maybe Germany can do the most with it. Japan and especially Italy will be doing progressively, notably less research in the long run, or you just won't be purchasing enough units to fund your war efforts. And if you're doing diplomacy on top of that, Lord help you. The allies, especially America, really need to be staying on top of tech. Certain allies don't need to, like France is just going to die anyway. You could mostly ignore research. Poland's just going to die anyway. You don't need to research anything. China needs to really be particular with its researches. The UK can be a little more US-like, and the USSR needs to also pick out more specific researches that it needs, because the USSR is going to be churning out units. It's going to work just like real life, where the casualties are through the roof. USSR lives off of just sending more and more and more land units to the front to slow down the German war machine until the war can change favors. Money can also be spent on operating units by rail or air units, just by having supply in general. You can, a viewer pointed this out, so I guess I'll mention it this time. You can try to min-max upgrades a little bit. So like if I put one upgrade point into the Ariettes, it's 12 MPPs. The second point is 13. The third is back to 12. I don't know the exact reason for this. I just know that if you have certain levels of production tech, that this goes away. But if you want to min-max one MPP here or there, you can look for that as well. There are very few events, and only events, this is the only way to do this, to have one nation pay for units in another nation. For example, America paying for Stillwell to go be a Chinese unit, for example, as well as the USSR being able to just give like 200 MPPs to China as another example. These are very rare, and you cannot willfully take these actions by yourself, even though you're controlling the whole side. So if you do want to send help to other nations, you're going to want to study the manual and strategy guide to see the conditions and triggers for all of that. It's not very complex. There are no resources. There is no economy per se. There's just money generators and things that you can spend money on. However, you don't have enough money to do everything. Navies and air forces are very expensive. Land forces are absolutely integral. Certain objectives to win the game simply cannot be accomplished. For example, an invasion of or from the UK without a heavy emphasis on Navy and or Air Force, which again is very expensive. You're going to need to pick and choose how you spend this money, because no matter how well you understand how money works based on reading the manual, watching this guide, or your own playing of the game, you just simply cannot be good enough to have enough money to do everything all at once. So striking that balance is very important, and that balance kind of has to be learned to your playstyle and based on whether you're fighting an AI or a human enemy and how that human enemy acts and how many advantages you've given to the AI, things like that. However, I hope this guide has at least been a help in your basic understanding of money, how to earn it, how to spend it, and things like that. This guide is part of a bigger playlist that you can find in the description below. If you have any suggestions for other guides you might want to see, leave that in the comments below. Also, ask any questions you have there, even if it's not good enough for a guide, and I will do my best to answer it as I can. For now, though, thank you guys very much for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.